Okay, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Lili Vargha from University of Vienna, and this research is funded by the Alexander von Humboldt Stiftung. I talk a little bit something different, what happens when the first baby is born, and I look at joint employment trajectories of first-time parents in Germany. So what is the motivation of this study? Probably everyone knows this year, but I think it's very good to stress that the birth of the first child dramatically transforms the lives of couples. A newborn vastly increases the demand for care, and actually this care demand really is a longer-term thing, so the care demand remains high for an extended period. So how do then parents adjust their work arrangements? While many studies focus on the employment patterns or work time of mothers, or fathers separately, which means that they treat them as independent individuals or independent entities. And a fewer studies take a couple perspective or consider the household context, but most of these studies are cross-sectional or explore labor division in relative terms. So there is really a limited understanding of how the employment of mothers and fathers evolve jointly surrounding first birth, and how these dynamics within and between couples shape these patterns. So these really motivate my research questions. What are the typical joint employment trajectories of parents surrounding first birth in Germany? How these patterns evolved over time? And how do parental characteristics and regional differences shape these patterns? Again, I would like to stress the research focus is a couple focus, so this is, I think, very important, and we have not really discussed this here, that fertility and also work arrangements afterwards should be looked at many times from a couple perspective, and I hope that I can persuade you here about this. And I also use a dynamic longitudinal perspective. I also would like to stress that I look at paid work only because there is not data on unpaid work, and this is very unfortunate. I would like to stress this, but yes, we don't have data on this. So just very, very briefly, the theoretical framework. So according to Becker, the couples specialize based on comparative advantage to maximize household utility. But according to Oppenheimer and the pooling of resources theory, couples with higher economic vulnerability are less likely to specialize because they are in need of resources. And according to the economic bargaining theory, the division of labor depends on relative resources. So there is an inequality between couples, and this really has an effect how much they focus on their career and how much care work they do. And obviously, these are economic perspectives, but then also institutions and norms and the societal context also matters how much people focus on care or paid work. And the case of Germany is especially very interesting because obviously in 1990 there was a regional divide, and East Germany was characterized by dual employment and more gender egalitarian gender regime, while West Germany was characterized by a breadwinner model. And then after reunification, these differences persisted, even until now, actually. But from the 1990s, there was more supported feminism and also increased part-time incentives. And the biggest change was in Germany was in 2007 when they introduced the Elterngeld. This was a major parental reform that reduced the amount of time given for parents, mostly mothers, for parental leave, 12 months, but really well paid. And they also introduced the daddy month. So gradually there is now a shift to more gender egalitarian regime in Germany. So what I do, or the data and the methods I use the SUB-data, the German socioeconomic panel study, that is a yearly panel, and I use fertility histories, activity biography data, so monthly employment spells, but I also use the yearly panel data. I focus on first birth between 1991 and 2014, and I follow couples for 6 years. So altogether, I have 84 months for all couples, for fathers and the mothers. 11 months before the first birth. Maybe I try to. Oof. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. So 11 months before and 72 months after. And so in order to identify typical groups of employment trajectories, I use group-based trajectory, multi-trajectory modeling, which is a type of growth mixture modeling. I have 4 binary outcomes over 84 months, whether the mother is full-time employed, not full-time, whether she's part-time employed, not part-time, whether the father is full-time employed or not full-time employed, or whether he's part-time employed or not. And in the second step, I extend this model with baseline predictors, and I also describe these groups in detail. So this is, after a long model selection process, this is the main output of the model. So here are 6 groups. I find 6 groups, and these are the outcomes. So this is the probability of the mother full-time employed from 0 to 1 over the month, and then the mother, oh, sorry, I have to, so the mother part-time, and then the father full-time, and the father part-time. I also show you this little line is when the birth was done. And so I find, this is really weird. Okay, I find 6 groups. And first of all, I also have to stress that obviously paid work is very gendered. So we can all see that there is a huge change for mothers and not so much change for the fathers, but still there is heterogeneity. And now I would like to just drive you through these results. So the first group is continuous specialization. The mother had a high probability of full-time employment, which dropped to 0 throughout all the 72 months. Her probability of part-time employment was pretty low, while the father was full-time employed the whole period. And there is the second group, which is the biggest group, is I called it emerging 1.5 worker. Again, the mother was full-time employed or had a very high probability of being full-time employed before, which dropped, while the part-time employment really is increasing throughout this period. The father is again full-time employed without any sign of part-time employment. Emerging specialization, this is something a little different because we can see that the fathers here have an increasing probability of full-time employment. So these are, the fathers are characterized by longer or shorter periods of inactive periods, and the mothers also go out from the labor market. So these were pretty much traditional couple arrangements. And now comes a little less traditional, so dual full-time. Full-time probability for the mothers drops, then really increases. She has some probability of being part-time, especially after the first birth. And again, the fathers are also full-time employed throughout the whole period. Female full-time, when the mothers have really the highest probability of being full-time, while the fathers have a lower probability of full-time and also an increasing probability of part-time employment. And a very interesting group, I think, this dual part-time group, which again characterized by a growing probability of the mother to be part-time employed. And also for the fathers, we see this increase in part-time employment and a little increase in full-time employment. So these probabilities are sometimes hard to understand. So it's also possible to visualize these multi-trajectories with sequences. So what I do now, one line is for the mothers. Again, these are the months on the x-axis. And one is for the fathers. And there are different states. These are sequence index plots, so full-time, part-time, parental leave, and inactive. So blue is inactive, and then also missing data, which I included maximum 35 months for mothers and fathers separately, and I took them as random in the model. And I can detail this if you are interested how this is then, what this means. And so again, we see this continuous, we see the very gendered pattern, but also we see these differences between the different groups, continuous specialization, emerging 1.5 occur, yellow colors, the part-time, emerging specialization, both of them have these blue inactive periods, dual full-time, much more pink for the mothers and the fathers as well. Female full-time, we again see this very pink, which is the full-time periods, while for the fathers it's in and out, inactivity, part-time. So these are really also not stable work life courses, and the dual part-time. Just very fast, also the association of baseline characteristics with these groups. So I extend this model with baseline characteristics. The main characteristics in the first model is a year of birth dummy. I took this 2007, the Elterngeld, as a cut, and then East and West Germany for the mother, whether she was born in East or West Germany, age of the mother, age difference between the father and the mother, and importantly, education from a couple's perspective. So tertiary education, only she, so only the mother or only the father or both have a tertiary education. So these are now the coefficient estimates for this extended model. So having a first child in 2007 or later and being born in East Germany significantly increases the probability in all other groups compared to the continuous specialization group. The tertiary education as well has an increasing probability of being in the emerging 1.5 occur, the dual full-time, female full-time, and dual part-time groups. The tertiary education, if only he has tertiary education, then there is a lower probability to be in this non-traditional as well as the emerging 1.5 worker group. And interestingly, if both have tertiary education, then there is a higher probability to be in the dual part-time. So we can also estimate predicted probabilities for different scenarios. In these scenarios, age of the mother and the age difference of the parents are kept average. So four panels. West Germany, before 2007, West Germany in 2007 or after, and here the East. So we can see this big East and West divide, and we can also see the reduction, or the less predicted probability to be in the continuous specialization group in the second period. And we can also see this very interesting educational gradient. So when only he has tertiary education, then this is really a higher probability to be in the continuous specialization group. This is something different. This is the dual full-time group. We again see this huge difference between East and West Germany, and also we can also see this educational gradient. And the last one, the dual part-time group, and we can really see that if both parents have tertiary education, then the predicted probability to be in this group is really higher, no matter in which period and whether it's in East and West Germany. The mothers are from East and West Germany. We can also see this increasing probability in the second period. So the most important time varying variable here is the birth of the second child. So obviously this is very important. The continuous specialization group, in this group, there's an 83% that the parents transit to higher order parity, but this is the smallest in the dual full-time group. But according to robustness checks, the birth of a second child or a third child doesn't affect the educational effects on the different groups. So just very briefly, so I find 6 distinct joint couple employment patterns. Most of them are traditionally full or partial specialization, but I also find very interesting non-traditional groups, dual full-time, female full-time, and dual part-time. We can see a big difference between before 2007 and 2007 or after. There's a clear east-west divide in the joint employment patterns, and I think very interestingly, we also see how relative resources matter. So when only she has tertiary education, there is a higher probability not to continuously specialize and be in the non-traditional couple types. When only he has tertiary education, there is a higher probability to continuously specialize. And when both have tertiary education, then interestingly, there is a higher probability to be in the dual part-time group. Thank you.